Welcome into the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. We are in the podcast Nook over in PFF offices, Cincinnati, Ohio. Just another beautiful Monday morning, Sam. How you doing after some Week 11 action?
Yeah, doing pretty good. It's been a rough morning of construction. The smell of asphalt wafting through the podcast studio.
I like to think our city's getting better this morning.
Yeah.
Making the place look better, making the outside of the office look better.
Gentrifying the place.
Yes, that's what they say. We're practicing our announcing skills.
Oh, you are? You're doing a pretty good Michael Buffer impression.
Was doing some Michael Buffer. I'm kind of sweating from doing my Michael Buffer impression.
Yeah, you really.
I had to get all worked up and take some energy to say. I can't say. Can you say the phrase that he says? Because he has it completely.
No, you probably have to pay the man.
It's like, let's do some.
Let's get ready to do something.
Yeah, let's get ready to do it.
Man has made an absolute fortune out of trademarking that phrase, which is why we're reluctant to say it on the air. But Steve, it turns out, does that really well as just that. He can do the full-throated catchphrase, but anything before that, Steve, he can't get the energy levels where they need to be. I
can announce Hulk Hogan pretty well, or Ric Flair. I can announce the words like him. But this stemmed from me wanting to have some sort of better opening or catchphrase. I feel like this is also something that people might be able to chime in on. Is there Is there like a phrase that my voice
lends itself to?
Yes, that's the best way of putting it.
Email in and suggest what what a bespoke Steve intro to a podcast should sound like.
Yeah, podcasts, plural podcasts, at profootballfocus.com. We'll take all suggestions.
Can't possibly count as emails for Steve, though, since we're just giving people a reason.
Ooh, see.
That's cheating. And
you're
that's
onto my game. Address them to me, just to be safe. All right, Sam, I might just sit on mute and turn the next part of the show over to you. Is this your time here?
Well, I think the big story coming out of this weekend was Buffalo benching Tyrod Taylor and the fallout from that.
What could have possibly gone wrong, Sam?
Well, the way it was described to me by somebody on Twitter, who I've actually neglected to find out what their name was to credit them for it, but they described it as, if you're a kid and you constantly want to, I want to eat this candy, give me the candy, more candy, more candy. And eventually your parents just get sick of the nagging. They go, right, you know what? Have all the candy you want until you make yourself violently sick and you never want candy again. That feels a lot like what the Buffalo Bills did in benching Tyrod Taylor. It's like, oh, you want to go with a different quarterback? Fine. Have all the quarterback you want. Enjoy your Nathan Peterman.
Have all the Nathan Peterman that you want. All 5 interceptions worth.
Yes. So Nathan Peterman lasts 25 snaps, only 15 of which were passing plays, and threw 5 interceptions.
And not all on him, though, Sam.
Not all.
I'm kidding.
But when you're at the point where you're nitpicking how many of the 5 interceptions that he threw in a half were his fault,
on 16 attempts,
things didn't go well. So a third of his pass attempts were picked off by the opposition. That is mind-blowing. I mean, it's just astounding numbers. Peterman has as many turnover-worthy throws in a half of football that Tyrod Taylor has the rest of this year. They're exactly matching. Tyrod Taylor has the second best turnover-worthy play percentage in the league this year, 1.07%. Nathan Peterman is at 12.5%. It's just
the league leader is generally up in the 5s, by the way. Just for perspective. Look, I know it's one game, small sample sizes, the numbers are good, but just for perspective, that's insane.
So, I mean, this was so bad that they had to put Tyrod Taylor back on the field at halftime and just get Peterman out of there for his own sanity, essentially. But now you're in this situation where what do you do next week? Have you got to go back to Tyrod for the rest of the season? Because, I mean, you were effectively... See, they're in this weird spot where I don't think they think they're contending this season, but the record says they kind of are. So
look, real quick, that kind of reminds me of, the fans that always chime in to us all the time, and clearly their only perspective is their team, and they haven't seen the rest of the league. So the Bills are like just focused on their team, and they're like, we're not a playoff team. Are you kidding me? And then it's like, have you seen the rest of the league? You're actually in the thick of the playoff race in the AFC. I don't know if you know that, Bills, but you're actually in the mix. So they were ready to give up because they only know what they see, not realizing that the rest of the AFC is terrible.
But I think there's another aspect of this, which is, can you make the playoffs versus have you any shot of actually winning a Super Bowl? So I think the Bills could easily make the postseason this year, but they have no shot to beat the Patriots in their own conference, let alone anyone that's going to come out of the NFC.
But you can't approach your season like that.
Well, that's the thing. I think they kind of want to, because they started off this season not expecting to be where they are right now, and now they just find themselves actually in the thick of it. But it's so they are almost dealing with this 2018 mentality, at which point Tyrod clearly isn't in their future plans, just the way they've behaved with him. Peterman probably isn't anymore either, but they at least needed to shot. Yeah, they at least needed to take a look at him the rest of the season to figure out what they had before they turned to the draft or free agency and tried to find the guy that they believe is the quarterback of the future. But they're in this weird position where they can't just come out and say that, yeah, look, we're only looking at 2018. Sorry. Right. So, we're going to go back to Peterman next week because we know what we have in Tyrod. So they're in this bizarre situation where they have to say, we're going to evaluate the tape before we make any decisions about the starter. We got to go back and we got to check it out. We got to figure out, what's what.
How many of those 5 interceptions were really his?
Make a real determination on exactly how Peterman played before we go forward. I don't think you need to do that. I think we can tell you how Peterman played, and it wasn't good. I was trying to think of a good way of summing this up, a good analogy. Everyone likes a good analogy, a good metaphor. It helps the mind process things.
Yes.
And I was trying to come up with one for the way the Bills have treated Tyrod Taylor and the attitude generally to certain Bills fans surrounding Tyrod Taylor. Because, see, the thing about him is he is an unconventional quarterback. He is essentially a game manager plus. And the plus being he is a threat with his legs and he can make spectacular plays in a way most game managers can't. So a game manager typically is a euphemism for a guy who's pretty bad at quarterbacking, but is just good enough at not screwing it up to be able to put out there until you find someone better. Whereas what Tyrod Taylor is, actually, I think, is a genuine game manager, which is he is really, really good at not turning the ball over.
Right. It shouldn't be a derogatory term. It should be a style of play.
And I think that's the thing, is usually it is a derogatory term. It's just a guy who is bad at the position, but bad in a specific way that you can tailor to, minimize their mistakes. But Taylor, I think, is actually a legitimate game managing quarterback in a positive sense, in that he won't turn the ball over, hardly ever. He is exceptionally conservative in terms of putting the ball in harm's way. He'll make some big plays, but he'll add a threat with his legs that most game managing quarterbacks can't. Since he started in Buffalo, he has 1,400 and something, about 1,500 additional rushing yards, which are numbers that obviously don't get factored into his passing statistics.
Right.
But he has 1,000 yards, essentially, 999. 1,000 yards that have come on scramble plays. So legitimately, you could take essentially 1,000 more yards and add them to his passing statistics because he's generated those on passing plays, breaking the pocket, turning busted passing plays into positive rushing yards. So those are the things that you don't tend to get from most game managing quarterbacks. So you're in a situation where if you have a decent team around this guy, he can win. And that's why the Bills are whatever they are. What are they now? 4-5?
5-5. Only 4 teams in the AFC have a better record than the Bills.
Exactly.
They're tied with the Baltimore Ravens.
So they're in this situation where they have a 500 record because earlier in the season, when the defense was playing well, Tyrod Taylor is a perfect quarterback to game manage and win this team some games. But as soon as the defense goes to hell, Tyrod Taylor is not the kind of quarterback that can get into a shootout and guarantee you 35 points and keep you in all these games and go toe-to-toe with high-octane offense. It's just not what he does. But the solution, when the attitude that the solution to that problem is going, well, let's find a quarterback that is, as opposed to let's fix the thing that went wrong in the first place. Like, I was trying to come up with a good analogy of that. And the closest I came up to was it would be like replacing the air conditioning unit in your house because it's not capable of keeping your house cool once the back wall of the house falls off. Like, I mean, it might address the problem, but it's not really getting to the root cause of your issue.
Which probably not going to stay cool.
Which is that the back wall of your house fell off. It's not that, the air conditioning unit isn't able to get its job done under those circumstances.
The back wall of the house being the Bills' defense, which is terrible these last couple weeks, historically terrible. We talked about it last week about how much they got destroyed by the Saints' offensive line and the Saints' offense, and yesterday was not much better. So Tyrod
and the Jets before that. I mean, it's
yes,
just,
and the Jets weren't good.
It's been a few weeks of that defense just being absolutely gashed.
So the the Bills, when Tyrod's playing Tyrod type of football and there's a complementary defense, it is kind of like on that Alex Smith type of spectrum, right? What we were talking about Alex Smith as coming into the season before he decided to start chucking the deep ball much better. And by the way, that started to disappear a little bit too. But we just said, look, Alex Smith, with all the right pieces around him, there's a reason why he wins more games than he loses, and it's because, he can at least keep you in the football game, make a few throws, and Tyrod does somewhat fit that bill.
Honestly, Tyrod Taylor, his baseline is basically peak Alex Smith.
It occurs differently though. So this is what gets to this is why I think the benching initially occurred. Offensive coordinators, I think, sometimes just can't wrap their head around what they have. Russell Wilson is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think anybody will doubt that, but he has games where the offensive coordinator is just scratching his head because it's like, here's the first read. It's right there. You're not taking it, and you're doing something that's just completely out of structure. Over time, it works, but you just know what you're getting into with Russell Wilson. Tyrod has plenty of that to him where it's like, I'm going to call this quick game. I'm going to call this quick pass, and I know where the first read is, and it's open, and he's not throwing it, and you lose a little bit of that maybe rhythm that you want offensively. But if we're just looking at end result and where you get to with those scrambling rushing yards that you're talking about and the fact that you're not going to be throwing interceptions and turning the ball over, you get to a similar spot as, say, like an Alex Smith, even though the style of getting there is different.
Yeah, look, I think the overarching sentiment with Tyrod Taylor is people are too focused on what he doesn't do and not what he does do consistently. And I think he's hurt hugely by the fact that the two numbers that probably sum him up the best are simple box score numbers, which is since he has been starting in Buffalo, which is like 2.5 years at this point, he has one game of 300 or more passing yards. And this is a league in which 300 passing yards fall from the sky on a weekly basis. They're constant. So he has one game in which he's achieved a 300 passing performance. But he has 16 games in which he has 100 quarterback rating or higher. So Tyrod Taylor, in pure nutshell form, is not a prolific passer. He's an efficient passer. Now, sometimes there are plays that he leaves out on the table. Sometimes there are plays that he doesn't read well, or he blows, or he doesn't get as far into his progression as you'd want. And sometimes he's too quick to take off in the pocket and all this kind of stuff. You can nitpick his game, but these are reasons that he isn't Russell Wilson. They're not reasons that he isn't a viable quarterback. When you add it the positives, the throws that he does make, the plays where he does extend the play and find a pass. I mean, even just when he came into that game yesterday against the Chargers, he made some plays. He hit some passes deep down the field, all this kind of stuff. He is a quarterback that you can win with if you fix all the other problems. The mentality that, our roster is terrible, the solution to that is to find an elite quarterback as opposed to fixing the terrible roster.
That was the solution presented to you on Twitter, correct?
Yeah. Some guy basically came to the conclusion the defense is terrible, everything around it's awful, so we need Aaron Rodgers. Well, hang on, why don't you fix the things that are terrible around the guy, and then maybe this quarterback looks a lot better. So I just think the whole mentality around Tyrod Taylor is too focused on what he can't become and not what he already is, which is well good enough to win games.
Yeah, and look, that's the biggest point. We did a well actually on it a couple weeks ago and just said, hey, you can win with Tyrod Taylor. I understand them wanting to look at other quarterbacks in the future. I would do that too.
Absolutely.
But there's also there's a way to build around his skill set currently in the present. All right, enough on Tyrod, but I know you'd be a little fired up with all of that. Fired up when he got benched, and even more fired up when Nathan Peterman went out and threw 5 interceptions.
Yeah, it was too perfect a story.
We touched on Kansas City briefly. Touched on Alex Smith briefly. I want to circle back to Kansas City. Have the wheels completely fallen off there? They just lose 12-9.
To the Giants.
The Giants' second win of the season. Alex Smith, I posted the grade just on Twitter a little while ago. After being one of the top-graded quarterbacks the first 5 weeks of the season, since week 6, he is number 27 now in PFF grades. Still has some nice stats. He still has the number 2 passer rating in the entire NFL, but his actual play has dropped off because that passer rating's been inflated by like a Tyreek Hill end of the half play and things like that. Somebody pointed it out to me on Twitter. This almost might be working like my Patrick Mahomes prediction before the season, where Kansas City's in this playoff push and Alex can only bring them so far? Is this the time? I'm not completely overreacting here, but is this the time to go to Patrick Mahomes and make a change on the offense?
God, no, it's not.
If this happened in reverse, hold on real quick. If this happened in reverse, if Alex Smith's first 6 games where he's the 27th ranked quarterback in the NFL, and then he has this stretch of 5 games where he's like number 2 or 3 or whatever he was with the top passer rating in the NFL. If you're sitting there after 6 weeks of the season and that's where he's ranked and that's how he's playing, we'd have that discussion. We would be considering it. But the fact that he started out so great and they beat the Patriots and they beat the Eagles and they looked really good early on.
Yeah.
But he's been terrible the last few weeks, and the team is not winning anymore.
Yes. The second part is the big thing. I mean, I've been waiting for this team to get itself back on track. I still think they're potentially one of the best teams in the AFC.
Absolutely,
but they
of course.
keep managing to lose against teams that they should be beating, or they at least I mean, this was the first real absolute clunker. I mean, they've lost to the Steelers. They were in that game all the way to the end. They lost to the Raiders. That was a ridiculous game and a ridiculous end. They beat the Broncos. They then lost to a Dallas team that was righting itself and getting back into a playoff push. So all that kind of made sense. And then they go out and they lose to the Giants team who just lost to San Francisco. I mean, and looked in complete disarray. This was the first game where it's just, this doesn't make any sense. And I don't really know why they're in this funk other than Alex Smith playing worse is definitely a big part of that. The reason I think it's different is because Alex Smith for the last 10 years has basically been the same guy. He's been a pathologically conservative, the great buzz, what the hell catchphrase? What
your
description?
Line,
yeah, my
your
line.
line from actually a few weeks back.
Pathologically conservative passer, and that was his cap because he wouldn't be aggressive. He wouldn't go deep down the field. That was the cap on how good he could be and how good the team could be. We've seen for the first half of this season that he can be more than that. He's done more than that, and when he is, he's better. So at that point, I don't think you can say just because he's gone back to that guy for a couple of games, you throw the baby out with the bathwater and you say, let's bring in Mahomes, who doesn't appear to be able to play at all within the structure of an offense. So you're saying purely the fact that he might make a few spectacular plays is going to be good enough to raise the fact that he can't really play in this offense at all. And that's a better way of winning.
We don't know that yet.
We kind of do.
I'm not.
He couldn't do it at college. He hasn't done it in the preseason. The idea that he could do it now is complete speculation.
I'm not advocating the move. I'm just wondering if it's now starting to come back up again, and we're still back at square one though. Square one was Alex Smith. We know what he is, and he'll make these throws, and he won't turn the ball over, even though he had that really bad late interception against the Giants. Can we sneak a few of these special plays out of him? He showed it for about 5 or 6 games. He showed it for about 5 or 6 games, but you're still back at square one where it's like, I hope he could get back to that point.
But they're still 6-4 and have a 2-game lead in the division. The rest of that division seems to be messing itself up as well.
I just don't like the way it's trending, Sam.
No, neither do I, but I don't see a way out of that. They're almost in the same situation as the Vikings in terms of I just don't see an easy way to make that quarterback switch. Like the only way that happens is if Alex Smith completely goes in the tank over the rest of the season.
You would need another game or two like Sundays, basically.
And they reach a point where they need to start winning games again just to stay in this playoff hunt. And, Alex Smith has played so badly that you have to sit him down. Or you get to the playoffs and Alex Smith goes back in the tank completely in terms of, pathological conservative play, and you say, well, hang on, look, the only way we're winning this game is to throw in the guy that can make the spectacular play.
Look, I'm not ready to give up on Alex Smith either. I just, he went from MVP candidate early in the season. Everybody was buzzing about that. Never thought he was really up there, but completely dropped off these last few weeks. Still think he can manage the game like he should be able to, but it's been ugly, especially on Sunday.
How ridiculous would this be if the Chargers end up winning this division after us riding them off and Mike jumping off the bandwagon?
They're only 2 games out.
That's what I'm saying.
Technically.
Of all the teams, I mean, if Kansas City are going to get caught by a team in that division, it looks like the Chargers are going to do it now. The Raiders are not good. The Broncos suck. So if anyone's going to catch
them... Plus,
I
put the nail in their coffin last week.
Also true. So if anyone's going to catch them, it's going to be the Chargers.
Yeah, the Chargers starting to become a little bit more of what we thought they were. 3-2 over their last 5 games. I want to touch on the NFC quickly. This was a week where it seemed like the top teams separated themselves. We had a separation type game with the Rams and the Vikings. The Vikings came out on top. The New Orleans Saints, ridiculous comeback against the Washington Redskins. They were all but done, and they were on their way to making a great comeback. They're down 8, and Drew Brees starts the last drive with a game-ending interception. But oh wait, it's called back by I believe it was an illegal hands to the face on the other side of the field, and then he just goes down the field on about 4 or 5 plays like it was nothing. They tie the game with a 2-point conversion. They got 2 2-point conversions to tie the game, go to overtime, beat the Redskins, and then the Philadelphia Eagles turn what was a close game for a while with the Dallas Cowboys into an absolute blowout between their offense starting to click, their defense forcing turnovers, including defensive touchdowns. So Philadelphia Eagles, New Orleans Saints, Minnesota Vikings, 9-1, 8-2, 8-2. What do you make of the top of the NFC where these teams all continue to separate themselves?
Well, I think that the AFC is quite clearly New England's to lose. You seem to think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are still in there. I mean, no.
There's a track record of the Patriots having success against the Steelers, but this does feel like the best Steelers defense we've seen in recent years, which gives them a bit of a shot.
So the Patriots are in the Super Bowl, and then the way to look at this is which NFC team would scare the Patriots the most in the Super Bowl.
That's the way to look at it?
Yes, the Eagles, the Saints, or the Vikings. I think like all 3 of those teams are pretty scary on their day. I think the one that's the least scary is the Vikings at the moment, purely because you can't have confidence in that quarterback situation.
You just don't know what you're going to get from Case Keenum. You have to give him credit for
this
season.
Absolutely. He has played dramatically better this season than you would expect him to have played, and his career baseline, all that kind of stuff. And I think everybody is waiting for the wheels to fall off, and they haven't yet.
Right.
But I think everybody still thinks they will. Like, nobody is looking at Case Keenum and going, yeah, he's a different quarterback now. This is his year. It's just, yeah, Case Keenum's playing really well, but at some point that's going to go bad. And then you have the situation of Teddy Bridgewater waiting in the wings, and we have no idea what Teddy Bridgewater is. I mean, not only is he coming back from a devastating knee injury that could have transformed him into a completely different quarterback, but he hasn't played in this offense. Like, he was hamstrung by a Norv Turner offense in the past. We don't know if he looked conservative because that offense was just a bad fit, or if he is another one of these conservative game managing style of quarterbacks, and he just isn't a great fit for this offense either. You may put him out there and he's no better. So I don't think, as good as that defense is, I don't think you can be scared of the Vikings as much as these other 2. Philadelphia and New Orleans, though, are both pretty complete looking teams and can beat you in a lot of different ways. I mean, those both look extremely tough. The Eagles yesterday, the thing that makes them really formidable is that they're getting better as the season goes on, not just because of improving, etc., but they're getting guys back. Ronald Darby played yesterday for the first time. Sidney Jones is supposed to be coming back later in the season. They're rookie cornerback. So they're a real area of weakness on paper. And this Patrick Robinson thing continues to still happen. Patrick Robinson is still a really good cornerback.
Still up there.
So they could potentially have the one area of concern with them was, well, that secondary is still a little bit shaky on paper.
Right.
If it gets Darby back and he's playing well, if it gets Sidney Jones in and he makes any kind of impact, suddenly that's scary.
I'll have a stat later on. Little tease on the Eagles. There's 1 or 2 stats that I think hit home as far as why the Eagles are at the top of the NFL. The point that we made about the Saints in recent weeks is that they're winning without Drew Brees, and they're winning games with their defense and their run game. And then you have a game like yesterday where the defense gets picked apart a little bit. Kirk Cousins was really outstanding yesterday, some of the big-time throws that he was making. And this is why the Saints are so scary and dangerous, right? They have the ability to win games with their defense and their run game, but if they do give up a lot of points, oh, by the way, Drew Brees is still there. And even though he did throw what should have been a game-ending interception, yes, he got bailed out, he still comes back, and more often than not, he'll get the job done. So he can go back to old Drew Brees and throw for 350 yards and move the ball when he needs to, or it could be like a couple weeks ago against Buffalo where it was just screen. He's not going to throw any touchdowns. He's not going to put up the gaudy stats that he usually does. They're capable of winning all of those different types of football games.
One thing that I think is different between the Saints and the Eagles is that I think the Saints are very thin at a couple of positions where if they lose a guy, they're in trouble. So the Marshawn Lattimore thing. We've talked about what a big impact he's made as a rookie and that number one shutdown corner that it gives him. The flip side to that is if you lose Lattimore, you're in a real hole. Whereas the Eagles have been doing this having already lost their Ronald Darby. He was essentially their Lattimore, their big acquisition at
Lattimore
cornerback.
would be a huge hit.
Yeah, so the Eagles have already done this, losing a couple of guys like that and are potentially getting them back.
And the Saints do have an injury. And out for the season, Alex Okafor, their breakout pass rusher.
We got our sound effect there.
Yes.
For the injury.
Oh, no. There's a man down.
We did have a quick contest. I need to get in touch with our guys last week. I asked, did anybody know where the sound effect came from? And we got the right answer. Madden 96. I don't know if it was in previous Maddens. I'm pretty sure it was exclusive in Madden 96. It was Pat Summerall. And, oh, man, brings a tear to my eye.
Great game.
I love Madden 96. Special time in my life. So we had to pull out the sound effect. But, yeah, Alex Okafor out for the season. Breakout pass rusher. A guy who on the other side of Cameron Jordan, essentially provided a compliment that they haven't had in previous years. 5 sacks, 4 QB hits, 21 hurries, 4 batted passes, led the team. So we'll see how they handle that loss. But, this is a defense that's been like Cameron Jordan, and that's it. And this season added guys like Okafor, had the breakout from Sheldon Rankins, have it David Onyemata breaking out as well in his second year, and, of course, Lattimore becoming one of the best corners in the entire NFL. So,
yeah, I think a healthy Saints team is equally as scary as Philadelphia, but the Eagles have done this with injuries, and I don't think you have the same concern about them if they start missing some players.
Yeah, I completely agree. So there were some other injuries around the league. Sam, you want to roll through some of the big losses?
Yeah, we lost Houston Texans running back Dante Foreman, tore his Achilles, I think, somehow tearing it at the end of a touchdown run. He somehow kind of launched himself into the end zone to get through a couple of Cardinals defenders and didn't come up, was clutching his Achilles once he went down. So he's done for the year. Running back, bad day for running backs by the looks of it. Chris Thompson, the Washington Redskins in that Saints game, was rolled up from behind. I think it was Sheldon Rankins chasing down Kirk Cousins from behind, ended up just rolling up on Thompson's leg. He was trying to throw a block. Kind of just one of those really crappy ways to get injured. You're not even really involved in the play and just giant people fall on your leg, and that's the end.
That is the worst.
And I think he was fractured one of those bones, tibia, fibia, one of the two. So he's out. Ogba was the other one, or Emmanuel Ogba for the Cleveland Browns, defensive lineman. Had been starting to play better this year, I think. It was actually flashing some of the talent that he'd shown in college. He's down. I think that was the main ones. Anything else you've got?
No, I think you hit on them, on the key injuries. So, special thanks to Pat.
Yeah, special thanks to Pat. There's a man down.
Quick break to tell you that this episode is brought to you by PredictionMachine.com. Prediction Machine, a new generation in sports analytics where they play the game 50,000 times before they're actually played. Make better picks with proven data-driven analysis. Subscribe at PredictionMachine.com today and earn a $5 credit that can be used towards the purchase of any package. All right, Sam, you and I were on analysis duty for the Patriots-Raiders game. Patriots pretty much dominated from the get-go in Mexico, and during the game, we were tweeting or texting back and forth or Skyping back and forth in our virtual office, and you were like, "This is not a shock. Yeah. Why is that? Not besides the fact that maybe the Patriots are just a better team than the Raiders. Preparation-wise, you seem to think that New England handled it the right way."
Well, look, everybody talks about how the Patriots are really good at stealing that extra little percentage point of whatever little bit of advantage they can get over everybody else. They're going to do. So you're going to Mexico City. The big thing there is the altitude. It's something like 2,000 feet higher than Denver, Mile High, which is already an altitude issue for teams going there. So the Patriots, just coming from Denver, spent the week at altitude in Colorado to acclimatize themselves to the even higher altitude they would have to deal with in Mexico. The Raiders, on the other hand, decided to stay home. It's not like they play at altitude. The Raiders Stadium is, in fact, below sea level. So to prepare themselves for playing at altitude, The Patriots spent a week plus at altitude to acclimatize, whereas the Oakland Raiders stayed below sea level to acclimatize themselves for altitude because it worked last time. So why wouldn't it work this time? They went there and they got their asses whooped. Now, I'm not saying that was the cause. I'm just saying that if you're looking for any little bit of advantage you can get over a team that is one of the Super Bowl favorites, you might want to go with something that, is, come on, give yourselves a chance.
I know.
Here.
That was a shrewd move by New England. They got to train at the Air Force Academy and probably run some option plays. They probably picked up a bunch of option plays for the week.
It just seems like the least you could do. We're going to be playing at altitude. Maybe we might want to spend some time at altitude.
My life is a small sample size, as I'm reminded over here. But let me just say, I played a little bit of baseball up in Colorado Springs. The altitude's I don't know how people play football at altitude. I ran like 3 pregame sprints, and I was out of breath.
It strikes me that big guys would struggle more than small guys as well.
Maybe that's what it was. So I did have...
Altitude doesn't seem like it would be your friend, especially because you're adding, an extra... significant volume of altitude just by being 19,000 feet tall.
See, that's a good point, too. Look, it's bad for pitchers in general because the ball flies. So they make massive ballparks, so it's not all home runs. And then everything becomes like a double, and just weird stuff happens at altitude. So I gave up like 8 runs in 2 innings, which, by the way, Sam, is just really bad.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing football now and talking to you. But
okay.
I had some rough times at
altitude. So we have
altitude
to thank for your PFF career.
That's why I'm here in the podcast nook with you. This week, we had a fun little article on the website discussing the Carolina Panthers running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Stewart, how they were being used. We've talked about the Panthers offense maybe as much as any offense because it was just such a fascinating offseason event, essentially. You've got Cam Newton matched with Christian McCaffrey and drafting of Curtis Samuel. Jonathan Stewart still there. What are they going to do on offense? A lot of my discussion on this offense has centered around the passing game. But I know you guys dug up a few nuggets about the running game, and I think when we look at Christian McCaffrey, it's like you and I both made the point he would be probably a second-round receiver last year in the draft, right? If he was just a receiver, you're like, hey, we could use this guy as a pure slot second-round receiver. But he's also a running back that can play in the NFL if used properly. What are they doing with their usage pattern for McCaffrey this year in Carolina compared to what he did at Stanford?
Yeah, so I think what made McCaffrey such a dangerous player is that he was a running back and a wide receiver prospect at the same time. He could do both those things really well. And for a relatively small and slight guy, he was really good at running between the tackles and ran in Stanford's power offense. They run a lot of power concepts, counter, all this kind of stuff. And McCaffrey ran those and was fantastic. He was fantastic at everything he ran at Stanford, but the point is...
Can we describe power real quick for the listeners?
We want to take another stab at this, given my impressive power performance from before.
I'll keep it extremely simple if you want. It's not... You don't have to grade every block.
Essentially just down blocks across the board, a backside pulling guard to come around and lead the running back through the hole, and get themselves yardage that way. Open up the hole that way.
I think the difference between this and say a zone schemes might have multiple points of attack, and you got to kind of read the defense. Whereas this is you're still reading the defense, but you need patience behind that puller, or 2 pullers, and then see where the hole opens up.
Yeah. So McCaffrey was extremely productive doing that, and the Panthers ran a ton of that last season. So it looked like a perfect match on paper. They were going from one power offense to another power offense, and this offense had Cam Newton there to be able to run even more exotic stuff and be able to get extremely creative. And this season it's just not really happening for them. They're still able to make a lot of use out of McCaffrey as a receiver, but as a runner, he's been a little bit disappointing compared with what a lot of people thought he could. So we started diving into the numbers and found out that he has been significantly less effective running zone plays than he has power plays. And if you look how often he's doing each of them, this season he's running power or counter 27% of the time for the Panthers. Last season at Stanford, that was up at 51% of the time.
Wow. And that's their game. They run it from every formation with 20 tight ends out there.
And what's really interesting is that last season, the Carolina Panthers were running power counter across all of their running backs 41% of the time. And this season, they're down at 27. So this offense has changed this season. It is running that kind of power counter style of football significantly less than it was a season ago. And McCaffrey just hasn't been as successful running the stuff that they're running now as he was a year ago, and neither has Jonathan Stewart. They've gone away from what they were so good at a year ago schematically, and it seems to be having a down effect on all of their running backs.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's, you get the smaller running back, and you're like, oh, we got to run him outside the number, outside the tackles, and he's a quick cutter. He has the traits, so to speak, Sam, to run the zone scheme. But when you watched him run power and counter at Stanford, so good at setting up his blockers. A little bit of Le'Veon to his game, right? Where he'd be really patient to the hole, and then so he's patient to the hole, but then quick enough to get to top speed to turn what might look like a 2-yard gain into, before you know it, he's got 5 or 6. I thought that was what made McCaffrey a special runner. And every now he'd break through and create some big plays as well. It is easy to pigeonhole a smaller guy into, well, he's a quick cut guy. That's let's put him in a zone scheme. One cut, you read the defensive leverage, you hit your one cut and you go, when a lot of times that power counter scheme is actually better for certain runners, and I think that might fit for McCaffrey, and it definitely fits for Stewart. That's what he's been running for years in Carolina. So that's an astute pickup by some of our analysts this last week.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting. If this Panthers offense goes back towards what it was in 2016, we may see them being significantly more productive with these backs.
Still got to figure out that short pass game and where they're going with it. Let's get into our weekly 3 signature stats, many of which come from PFF Elite. You guys can join along with us, profootballfocus.com. Get over there and find PFF Elite. Don't forget, you guys can use the promo code PFF10 to get $10 off of Elite or Edge or Elite Monthly. So you can get that whole monthly subscription, get $10 off. Just see if you like it, and then you can go month to month if you would like. Do you want me to kick it off, or do you want... I'll kick it off. I'll kick it off. Okay, we got 3 signature stats. Some of these are from Elite. Some of them are from the outer reaches of the PFF database. This first one, it's about the Eagles. I teased it earlier. Here's the reason why they're the best team in the NFL. I know Carson Wentz is getting his MVP hype, and he's had a fantastic second season. But if you look at the trenches, this is where the Eagles are winning. They are number 1 in pass blocking efficiency among offensive lines. And pass blocking efficiency essentially measures the offensive line's ability to prevent pressure, prevent sacks. That is their number 1. Their running backs haven't been great, but as far as the offensive line goes, they're number 1 at 84.1, just ahead of the New Orleans Saints. There's a trend right there. But then on the other side of the ball, their pass rush, highest pressure percentage in the entire NFL, 42%. They've created pressure. 42% of plays, the Eagles have created pressure, and they're doing that predominantly with a 4-man rush.
Yeah.
They don't blitz a whole lot. I mean, this is classic Jim Schwartz defense. It's a 4-man rush. Go get the quarterback. They've got the 6th lowest blitz percentage in the NFL. They don't even stunt a whole lot. Again, just flying through our numbers here, but 42% pressure rate, and we saw that against Dallas, forcing Dak into interceptions, strip sacks. That defensive front, they roll 7 deep on the defensive line, and it's really showing in the stats.
Yeah, a huge amount of pressure from all those guys. So every now and again, you get a guy come out of nowhere, puts up some big numbers. This is the guy that will have fantasy people pulling their hair out. Where did this guy come from? How did we not know about him? And this week, Cardinals tight end Ricky Seals-Jones.
Tight end, or is he a wide receiver? He's a long, skinny guy.
Comes out of this game with 3 receptions, 54 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So a big fantasy day for him.
Yeah.
And you think, how do we not know about this guy? How we've got to get this guy. The problem is, this is one of the more bizarre sort of statistics I've seen. Ricky Seals-Jones this season has played 9 snaps. In those 9 snaps, he has been targeted 6 times, and he has 2 touchdown catches. So it's not like this is a guy that's been sort of stealing playing time for a while, and this was his breakout game. He played 8 snaps this week and got 6 targets and 2 receptions. So it's a guy who legitimately 5 targets this week, 1 target in his only previous snap.
It's the secret weapon.
So basically, every time this guy is on the field, they're throwing him the ball.
He had 1 snap back in week 5,
and he had a reception and had a target.
Had a drop.
Yeah. So basically, every single time this guy is on the field, they're throwing the ball his way.
He's just picking up stats left and right whenever he's on the field. Seals Jones was a highly touted recruit at Texas A&M, had an okay career, and then in the evaluation process was one of those, you don't see a ton of them, but a wide receiver, tight end, tweener. He's really skinny, but he's bulked up in recent years. So we'll see if he can build upon that. And then, if he sees 50 snaps, Sam, he might get 40 targets.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, if you keep that pace up.
Well, in which case, yeah, if they get him on the field for the rest of the season, he'll break the all-time targets record. That's what we're looking at
Let's just see if he can keep up that pace. Sticking with our signature stats, all part of PFF Elite, we're going to go to wide receiver deep passing. And in that game yesterday, New England quarterback Tom Brady hit Brandon Cooks with 2 deep passes. Brandon Cooks, currently, coming into the game, he was leading, but he extended his lead in receiving yards on deep passes. That's 20-plus yard passes. Brandon Cooks has 431 yards on those deep targets. That's more than 100 more than the next closest receiver. So Cooks is at 431. DeAndre Hopkins is second at 313. And then Adam Thielen of the Minnesota Vikings is third at 306. Those are the only 3 guys that are up over 300 yards. Cooks has over 100 more than the next closest receiver. And he's been efficient while doing it, too. It's not pure volume. Cooks has the 6th highest catch rate on those deep passes. So he's 11 for 21, 52.4%. of his deep 20-plus yard passes have been caught. So Cooks, offseason acquisition for the New England Patriots. And I think when you look big picture at this season, it's a different New England offense. It's more of a downfield passing attack, and Cooks has been a big part of that. It really is completely a complete turn from where Brady has been for the most part year in, year out these last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, he was brought in to be that deep target, and he's been exactly that guy. He gives them the deep threat they haven't had.
Well, that'll about do it for this week, Sam. You got anything else? Anything else that stood out, or what are we going to do this week? We got a little different week here for the podcast.
So Thanksgiving week, so things are changing a little bit. I think the idea is tomorrow on Tuesday, we're going to be recording our mailbag edition. So earlier this week, if you have mailbag questions for us, fire them to podcasts@profootballfocus.com, podcast plural. We have a fantastic idea already. Somebody wants you to start pronouncing some Irish names, some Gaelic names. Given how much you struggle to pronounce regular words, trying to pronounce Irish names, it's comic gold is all I'm saying. I haven't even heard you try it yet. So that email is sitting there in the bank, ready to go. If you have anything else for us, fire them in. I think the plan is also to combine that mailbag app with the QB podcast, have like an hour-long bumper edition.
We'll keep that tight. We'll do a little QBs, a little bit of a little bit of mailbag, combine those, and then try to hit up the preview at a timely time.
Yeah, then we're still working on when we're going to do our preview. There will be a preview podcast this week. We just haven't exactly figured out when it's going to be yet.
So either way, hit that subscribe button. Stay with us all season. It's normally 4 big episodes all week. This week we're going to cut it down to 3 and hopefully have some good listening for you guys for all of your Thanksgiving travels, or if you guys are overseas, for your Thursday.
Yes. We've got you pronouncing names, so there's going to be good stuff there.
That'll be worth tuning into. I'm going to practice. I'm going to look up some Gaelic and study up. Is there an alphabet? Like, how does this work?
No, it's like the regular alphabet. It's just the combinations of letters in Gaelic come up with different sounds than they do in English.
You come over here and hate on my country for everything, and then you're going to come back and tell me that you guys just make up your own sounds that don't make any sense?
Our sounds existed before your sound did. You know.
We're
an older language.
We brought reason to sound in American English.
Uh-huh.
All right, guys, that'll do it for today. That's your Week 11 review. Again, don't forget to get to ProFootballFocus.com. Grab your Edge or Elite monthly package with promo code PFF10. And if any of you guys have any business interest in advertising on the pod, please also hit us up. Podcasts@ProFootballFocus.com. All right, guys.
Don't forget the free stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you just want to fire us free stuff, we're always up for that.
Yeah, we could use stuff to put up on the walls, new furniture, other stuff that's just cool around the office. Because,
what else would we like? What would be good in here that we can get out of people?
How about local restaurants, too, if you're around the Cincinnati area? If you just want us to advertise your food?
If you're interested in just generally giving us some free food for the goodness of your heart, we will talk about your awesome free food.
Yeah, Whole Foods Donuts.
If you can cater our podcast is what we're saying. If you can cater our podcast, we're in the market for that. Always.
Yeah, we're in the market for anything. So if you guys are in the marketplace, hit us up. Now you're getting too beggy right now.
Yeah, now I think
we've
taken it to a bad place.
All right, guys, that'll do it. We'll talk to you next time.